We're back. Welcome to season 3 of DAO Talk. This is DAO Talk Weekly. It used to be your one-stop shop for everything DAOs. It still is. Things are ramping up. We've ramped up production. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen the new art, go ahead and look at your phone or whatever you're watching this or listening to this on, whether it be a YouTube thumbnail or you're getting it linked from Twitter. We have some amazing new art. We have a lot of good things coming down the pipeline. We're re-upping our interviews. We'll have 2 of those going out monthly every other week. We'll have DAO Talk Weekly in its typical time, Friday, coming out at midnight Eastern time into your feeds. So those will stay at their normal clip, but we'll have at least 2 interviews a week. We had one go out in our little hiatus, interviewing the CEO of Open Dollar, which is just launching today on Tally. If you're listening to this on Friday, that launched 2 days ago. But yeah, we're really excited about season 3. Going to take this thing to the next level, maybe do some live recordings at events that we're going to throughout the year, and just really upping the quality, upping the content, and keeping this your one-stop shop for everything DAOs, keeping everyone informed, keeping it fun, keeping it lighthearted, but also giving you the information you might want to need or that you might miss throughout the week. High signal, low noise, with always, your banter and shit talk and shit posting as well. Frisson, how have you been? It's been a crazy couple weeks. I think it's been over a month and a half since we talked last on DAO Talk. I think back in like early December, late 2023. But it's been a crazy time. How have you been, my friend?
I've been good. It's like the bull market never stops. Like it was especially difficult to really take time off during the holidays this year because everyone wants to launch governance. They want to launch it now. So the joys of working in a cyclical industry. But it was good. Was able to disconnect a little bit. I saw on Twitter, Tommy, that you unplugged for a bit. Shout out to you. It's like the Zoomer equivalent of successfully summiting Mount Everest. It's like unplugged for 2 days. But I was able to unplug a little bit, and then we've just been working hard to try to help as many teams as we can be successful with governance. So it's been fun.
Yeah, things have been, and we haven't been on DAO Talk, but things have been very busy on our end on the Tally side. Like Frisson said, it's a cyclical market, and a lot of people are coming back, and everybody wants to launch a token. CSG, if you're listening to this, everyone, and CSG has some rough audio, we're sorry. We hopefully will be fixing it in post. And if you've been a long-time listener, CSG is typically the usual suspect when it comes to audio problems. But CSG, where are you this week? And why is your audio bad? I mean, that kind of goes hand in hand with where you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm in Santa Teresa, Costa Rica. We had a team offsite last week that was really invigorating, really. And also fun. We all got to ride horses. And then I just stayed on an extra week to go to Santa Teresa. Actually, Denison recommended it. And I was a little bit sus because it was like a 6-hour drive and I had to rent a car. And now I'm sleeping in said car and all this stuff. But it's so cool here. Everyone works in tech and is co-working 24/7. So it's very conducive to work, actually. Which is good, like Frisson said, making teams successful, like Open Dollar today. But the last month has been good. The index token went up over, I think it was the day after Christmas, or the day before. So that was a great Christmas gift. And then I think I haven't been on DAO Talk since I aped into monkey haircut over the holidays. So that's been another good signal of the bull run. And also my personal meme coin. Just deep, deep love.
Yeah, as always, NFA on this. We talk market talk, but nothing is financial advice. In fact, it's probably the opposite. I'm not even going to say that because that's probably still financial advice in the eyes of the SEC. But speaking of the SEC, we would be remiss without talking about, we kind of go on hiatus for DAO Talk and shit pops off, particularly in the Solana ecosystem. Something we've all been going deep on. We've had some good content around that on the Tally newsletter, talking about Solana governance. And we'll have some more Solana content throughout the year, maybe some interviews on DAO Talk, and definitely some written content in regards to DAOs on Solana governance and whatnot. But the big story, I feel like that it's dominated in the past couple of weeks, and I'd love to get, Frisson's kind of unfiltered talks on it as always. But ETF has kind of dominated the news. I think the thing can't get over on it all, because I feel like we've been talking about the ETF forever, but just the shit show and the debacle around will they, won't they, tweeting it out, saying their account got hacked, but it actually didn't get hacked, but they never actually came out and like said it wasn't hacked. They didn't walk it back. But at the end of the day, ETF gets approved, or Bitcoin spot ETF gets approved, and is trading on a lot of the main trading platforms in the US, except for Vanguard, RIP Vanguard. Frisson, thoughts on just the frothiness of it all and the craziness of it all the past week? We were all and just all, basically the entire Tally team was packed into a van and like some random Costa Rican town when we got the news about the ETF getting passed, not getting, or getting approved, not getting approved, and then the next day getting approved again. Thoughts on it all? Thoughts on our boy Gary?
Yeah, it's so funny how he's like, they were clearly going to approve it, and then just like they couldn't even manage the comms process of announcing it on the correct date and time, which then moved markets. It's like, oh, apparently they've like sued companies before for having poor Twitter like two-factor authentication practices, leading to account hacks, which like affected the price of the stock. It's like, wow, okay, it literally happened to you. Who sues the SEC? Crazy, man. But yeah, it's out. It feels like the launch has gone really well. Like, I'm not a TradFi person. So I don't know a lot about like ETF flows and stuff like that. But the people who do track ETFs seem really enthused by like the amount of volume that has come through. There's a bunch of products, there's like 12 or more companies that like successfully had a Bitcoin ETF, spot Bitcoin ETF approved, and like several of them are getting like a significant amount of volume, which I think is just like really awesome for the space, because it just penetrates crypto into like one more part of the world where it's really difficult to access. I think it's very simplistic to think about the ETF as just like, oh, now you can buy it on not Vanguard, because they were like, no, you can't buy Bitcoin ETF on Vanguard, but like on Fidelity, right, which is like incredibly popular like product that many people use in the US. Like, yeah, that's true, but like I don't know how many people incrementally are just gonna like immediately start buying Bitcoin just because like they can buy it on Fidelity. The more important part is that there's like all these people who exist in the space between the asset and the end user, right? Like financial advisors and like Fidelity account managers and ETF salespeople and like blah, 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 right? And basically they all now have an incentive to sell people crypto, literally. And like, so you've seen these like super high dollar commercials, like, in the bear market, it was only Coinbase making like really high quality crypto commercials, but now like Van Eck is like making these, and like Bitwise are making these like really good like commercials, about the value prop of crypto. And you can see there sort of like salespeople and financial advisors and account managers, et cetera, are all like, I'm not saying they're just like going around shilling Bitcoin, although I mean if you watch the commercials, that's exactly what they're doing. But like they're able to recommend it, right, as one thing to add to your diversified portfolio. I know you guys don't know what that is, but looking at UCHG, but your diversified portfolio, of assets, which is like really powerful. I made an estate plan, because I had a child and I'm an incredible boomer, and I want to have control over what happens if anything happens to me, and like the attorney I was working with, like they just can't really do anything with Coinbase. Like is basically just going to go into, receivership basically, like, or go into, like the state process, you can't actually like put Coinbase assets really into a trust, right? This is some like incredibly high level boomer shit, but like that's really, there's a lot of people who just won't even consider using like buying something on Coinbase for that reason. And certainly like their financial advisor is not going to somehow recommend that they buy something on Coinbase if they can't even like include it in the estate plan, which is like a very basic thing that people who are not degenerates do. So yeah, anyway, yeah, I think it's really awesome. I'm stoked.
Yeah, prices have been relatively unaffected. I think something we've always talked about on DAO Talk, or something I've learned from Frisson, is you're kind of trading the narrative or the announcement in the months and then however long beforehand. It's kind of baked in, like it's all narratives, and CT is terminally online, so usually price action's pretty much traded or priced in leading up into it. So there's been a ton of action, but it's been more so in the action in the streets of the collective mind share of Twitter and TradFi. Haven't gotten a lot of chirping from my normie friends, so that's been interesting. CSU, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, I'm just saying my parents are, the vibes are getting better about crypto. The last mega crypto thing they heard about is SBF. So, and that's obviously so negative and horrible. So them hearing about this, if Gary Gensler thinks it's legit, then my parents are definitely more likely to think it's legit, sadly. But realistically, and that's probably the story for so many people. So I think it's also part of not just at the micro financial advisors, but also think about how much more money and also mega inflow is going to come into crypto.
Cool. All right, let's jump into some news from the DAO ecosystem as a whole. Drew Coffman from Base tweeted out something literally right before we started recording, and I thought was great and kind of a good transition from the frothiness of the ETF and the market and kind of the precursor of this upcoming bull. But he tweeted, "On-chain governance is a genuine or still so early situation." Something, if you're probably listening to this, if you've been a long-term listener or, you are a Tally employee like we are, something we've been preaching from the rooftops for the past, 2-3 years. But it's good to see some takes from Drew and just proliferating that idea into the ecosystem. I think it is very true. I think we would all agree here. And then a great response, 100% and so much value to be created. Effective on-chain governance is an unforkable moat. Frisson, thoughts on that? I think we all know your answer, but I'd love to hear your take from Drew tweeting this out.
Yeah. I think it's true. It's still so early. We're still so early is an interesting meme that you can take in many different ways, right? We talked about this a lot during the bear market, but there's just been a lot of progress, right? Because if you're still early and also you're not improving the situation, then you're just permanently early, and then you're not early to anything. There's nothing in the future to be early to. But if you were to really, which maybe we should do this, really draw out the history of on-chain governance and all the progress that's been made, basically since DeFi launched, which is the first time that on-chain governance was really needed. It's been tremendous growth. This year, a lot of the innovation and growth in 2023 was in layer twos, both Arbitrum and Optimism. Both of their DAOs were some of the most important parts of the entire crypto space. Just funding initiatives, doing RetroPGF, launching on-chain incentives. They really innovated around how does a community coordinate around assets, right? How does a decentralized community coordinate around a treasury, around shared assets stored in a smart contract to drive growth? And both those projects are doing really well, right? And the DAO is the on-chain governance process is deeply intertwined into the growth of the protocol in a very clear, very tangible way. So I think it's going really well, and what we're still so early means in this case is it's working and it's going to work incredibly well, right? I think what we're still so early to is it doesn't yet work well enough for people who don't absolutely have to have it, which is basically crypto protocols, to use it aggressively, right? And so in the last bear market, we saw a lot of quote unquote DAOs that sort of wanted to have a community governance driven thing, but didn't really have something concrete to govern, kind of flounder a little bit. Something concrete that had to be governed on chain, right? In the same way that a roll-ups contracts or treasury do. And so I think what we'll see in this, this next 3 to 5 years is really people extending the idea of on-chain governance or just governance in general and decentralized autonomous organizations outside of we'll see a lot of growth kind of in crypto, more layer twos, more DeFi protocols, et cetera. But we'll start to see some of the technology that is put in place to kind of coordinate around resources with on-chain governance be extended outside of these core use cases where it's flourishing.
Yeah, the tools are already there for the most part. I'm not disagreeing with you, Frisson, just talking in general. I think something we always talk about internally is another thing that goes hand in hand with Drew's tweet. If you're listening to this, you know this, but we can talk about it all we want and preach about it all we want and educate it as much as we can. But when it comes down to it, it's okay. If you're listening to this, where can you make a direct impact in? It sounds so cultish and like a religion, but proliferating, best practices into the organizations you care about. I think it all comes down to I did an internal presentation last week. It's the only limit you have is the story you're telling yourself and the limits you're placing on yourself. It's not as hard as you think to create an unforkable moat, like that reply to Drew's tweet is saying. The tools are there. The best practices are there, and we're doing our best to, make them as easily as accessible as possible, not just by creating them, but by, creating network effects, going to events, talking to people, making it cool. I think a big part of on-chain governance being early is it's still not cool. It's still not cool to do because it does seem a little boring sometimes. But in fact, it is cool because it's creating a more equitable system and locking in value and protecting your protocol, protecting your organization. So I would just encourage people to see that and actually, make an impact wherever you can. And if you don't know the best way to do that, I would say follow us. Frisson's really good at helping people get involved more on the technical side. I feel like I'm more, suited to, having entries into more of the non-technical community design side of things. And the CHG I feel like is a perfect middle ground to that, which is why I think we all mesh together. But yeah, still very early and we're excited to, the tools are there, like I said, but like Frisson said, they're going to expand outside of, the use case they're in now. And we're constantly building. And if you want to get involved with that, give us feedback, use Tally, use other DAO tools. You don't have to just use Tally. And you literally can. This is early internet. This is early 2000s internet. You can make a direct impact on where this industry and where this movement of on-chain governance goes. So feel motivated, feel empowered, because that's at the core of it. That's what it is.
I think we're starting to see more experimentation in governance, which is really cool. Even the inbound from Tally in the last few months has been wildly different than I imagine it was a year ago, or what we've even seen out there a year ago. So some examples are places asking for optimistic governance, asking for VE token style voting, asking for these unique integrations and voting systems that we haven't really seen in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about RetroPGF. We've talked about it ad nauseum before, but during our hiatus, RetroPGF was distributed. Tally received a small chunk of that, so we're very excited and honored to receive some of that as well. But also just, I don't know the exact number, but well over 100 projects and individuals received RetroPGF funding from the Optimism Collective. A lot of really positive discourse on Twitter around it all. Of course, you have your, this is not a business model thing, and they can't give away free money forever. But I just think it's really cool to see. I saw a lot of really cool, lesser known projects or projects that weren't necessarily looking for funding or looking for money get rewarded retroactively, and I think it was a net positive for the whole space. I think well over $90 million ended up getting retroactively distributed into the ecosystem. So it's really cool to see. Any post-mortem takes on that from the squad?
I'm thinking that this retro has a really good model. I'm starting to think that more and more. I remember when that first came out and I was like, this isn't going to work. And then I was on the train of VC funded places. I don't know if they should get it as much as non-VC funded. And now I'm thinking from the recent RetroPGF that a lot of the projects are really well deserved and wouldn't have done what they were able to do if they weren't anticipating this sort of retro funding. So I'm bullish on it. I think that we saw that Gitcoin has made RetroPGF a sort of open source model that even Tally could, do something with in the future. So I think it's not just the results of this RetroPGF round, but I think RetroPGF as a whole has a really bright future, especially with the bull market.
Agreed. Cool. Frission's just looking at me like I don't even know. So we're gonna move on. Speaking of Frission, we're gonna kind of end our weekly update with this tweet from Frission. He was tweeting about consumer crypto, which is also like kind of the hot meta take on the old Twitter Xverse right now. When it comes to building consumer crypto apps, I've learned that there's absolutely such a thing as too crypto native. Frission, take us into your mind space. What were you thinking? What were you feeling when you were tweeting this? Definitely agree. I think it goes kind of hand in hand with the on-chain governance talk, RetroPGF talk, kind of all of it as a whole, and framing this entire episode, this entire discussion around, okay, it's cyclical. We're coming back into, that next peak, which is, if you look at cycles, is going to be higher, more users, more people. Something we've been talking about throughout the whole bear is like, okay, how do we make it as accessible and palatable for new entrants? So yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this and what you're thinking and kind of tying it into everything we've been discussing today.
Yeah, I think the bear market, or like the downturn of the cycle, is the time to like refocus on the core, right? Where do we already have product market fit? Where can we better serve kind of the crypto natives? And then, the expansion time is time to level up, right? I think, not that I recommend like replicating all the practices that everyone did during the NFT times of 2021, but like that was a really important moment for the space where, crypto sort of like went mainstream and people kind of understood the value of, having art on a blockchain and being able to like control, all the transactions that surrounded that art in like a self-sovereign way. And just, they had like, they probably wouldn't have even articulated that way at the time, but it's just like they came in and had fun experiences like trading JPEGs, right? And just like crossed the chasm culturally, right? I think that's going to happen again. It's probably going to happen in multiple ways, right, over the next 1 to 2 years. And I think DAOs are going to be a really important part of that, right? It's like, it's kind of all a similar meme, but it's like you can just come in and contribute, right? It kind of ties back to the RPGF and the grants type work. It's like these open organizations, you can come in, understand, okay, what's going on? What does this DAO control? Like, why does it exist? What do people care about? Who's involved? And then just like go, right? And I'm seeing this, like, obviously that's a meme. There's various challenges to like immediately coming in and generating value in a DAO, but it is possible. I'm seeing people do this actually in the Arbitrum DAO right now, right? Like there are people who have had like kind of come ups just in the Arbitrum DAO and are now, working on really important initiatives and getting paid and changing the future of the space. So I think this idea of like being able to, I think the most powerful thing about what we're working on is taking this power, right? Like the admin control over a smart contract, which would be like a treasury or roll-up contract, whatever it is, right? It's people talk about like, oh, who are the real power players? Like who's the deep state? Who's the blah, blah, blah? Like that's like the deep state, right? That's where the real power is, like who actually can take these resources and move them somewhere else or change them or update them. And in the legacy world, it is incredibly opaque how to get access to that power. And people spend their whole lives like, networking in like Washington, D.C. to like get like within like of reaching across the room's distance to like real power, right? Whereas in crypto, it's like, yeah, Arbitrum's crazy. I think there's like 12 billion in TVL on Arbitrum. And like the DAO controls that, right? Like they don't control the TVL that's in individual protocols, but like the rollup as a whole is what's securing the TVL, and the DAO has control over it. They have control over the revenue that Arbitrum makes off of the transactions that are involved in that TVL. And so this is really powerful, and it's something that I think people who are ambitious or who want to change the world will be attracted to, right? Because they see the potential to really get involved in something that matters and something that has like true, influence, right? And so I think like the teams and the people that can sort of like make that fun experience and make it accessible and also safe, emphasis on the safe, will be really successful.
Yeah, speaking of opportunities in the space, there's a wonderful opportunity. We talked about Contigo before, kind of our little, not so much little anymore, our little DAO experiment that Frisson and I created, and she joined on when she joined on Tally. It's a great opportunity to connect writers with paid opportunity and work in the DAO space. And there's a wonderful opportunity for DAO writers. If you know any or you are one, definitely reach out. We've contracted Contigo with 12 new articles for DAO thought leadership and some technical writing to feature on the Tally Mirror. So if you are a writer, or you know a writer, or you have some ideas you want to get out in a long form fashion and get paid for it, reach out to me. We'll link that tweet in the show notes as well, but looking forward to that. And then some events we have coming up. We'll be in East Denver at the end of February, early March. We're going to have a booth experience. Emphasis on the experience. It's going to be a really good experience. We'll have a side event as well, and some awesome merch with some redemption mechanisms that you have to kind of earn in order to get it. It won't just be giving it out. So that'll be late February, early March. Then we'll possibly be at ETH Berlin, which makes its return in late May, and then ETHCC in Brussels, Belgium, not Paris this year, in July. That's kind of like the first half of the year event schedule that at least one of us will be at. So keep an eye out for that. All of those, or not all of those, but the links to the Contigo opportunity and the tweets that we talked about today will be in the show notes. We'll have our screen share, our usual screen share and meme of the week back next week as we start to ramp up production on season 3. Sorry for any technical difficulties if you have experienced them, if we weren't able to fix them in post. As always, check out the Tally newsletter, which will be linked in the show notes, DAO Talk newsletter, and we'll link all of our socials below. Shout out Ellie, who is editing and producing this. If we sound and look amazing, it's not because of us, it's because of her. So shout out to Ellie. Keep an eye out on the DAO Talk Pod Twitter. We'll be posting all of our updates and links and cool events and things we're doing there as well, along with some interview schedules coming up. That's been it. That's the premiere of season 3 of DAO Talk Weekly. Keep an eye out for some interviews coming in the pipeline, and we'll see you next week for DAO Talk Weekly season 3 episode 2. I think it's like episode 68 total of the entire pod, but peace.
Peace.